I am not a Smash YouTuber. I'm not even a gaming YouTuber. Heck, I'm not even a YouTuber in general. Neither do I want to be. But you ever get a really dumb, really nerdy idea that is kind of pointless, but you feel like doing it anyway? Well, that's what this video is. You've seen the what if every series in Smash had one more fighter? But what if we did something sillier? What if we just did something so stupid, like what if every series in Smash Ultimate had double the fighters? 2 times the roster size, over 150 characters, about 80 new ones. What is the point of this video? I don't know, just felt like it, I guess. Okay, so first, we should establish some ground rules. This isn't just doubling the size of the roster. That'd be way too easy, and at that point you could just abandon the entire premise. You could just add dozens and dozens of those most wanted new third-party characters, quote unquote. These are all just going to be from series already present in Smash, with an asterisk. We'll get to that later. Next, each series' fighter roster will literally double in size, so Kingdom Hearts will only get 1 new character, whereas Super Mario will be getting 9 new characters. Next, only characters that existed by the time of Smash Ultimate's development, or its DLC. So, no Ravenbeak, for instance. Yeah, let's just say this really hurt some series and made it a lot harder to think of characters that you could at least see a Smash character if you squinted. Finally, you might be wondering, how the hell are you going to come up with second fighters for shit like Wii Fit or Duck Hunt? Well, I'm going to get that out of the way first. I'm actually not going to pick more characters from those series, because I doubt there's many people on the edge of their seat wondering if I'm going to pick Polar Bear with sunglasses or that pterodactyl thing for the new Ice Climber character. Instead, I've put Ice Climbers, Mr. Game & Watch, Rob, Wii Fit Trainer, Duck Hunt Duo, and me. Yes, just me, because I'm sure as hell not going to make this more difficult for myself by counting the me as 3 different fighter slots into a silly one-off series. So rather than picking another character from the Game & Watch or Gyromite series, I'll pick characters that embody a similar classic or silly spirit. And the 6 characters I've chosen from this quote-unquote classic/silly series to be brought into Smash Ultimate are Takamaru from Murasame Castle, the Excitebiker from Excitebike, Ayumi Tachibana from Famicom Detective Club, the quote-unquote Rhythm Girl from Rhythm Heaven, Monita from Nintendo Land, and lastly, the Power Glove from, real life, I guess. I almost feel like Takamaru would have been an eventuality in Smash, given Sakurai's apparent fondness for the game, and including Takamaru as an assist trophy despite being not relevant at all. Excitebiker was a consideration by Sakurai for some of the earlier Smash games, but he couldn't exactly figure out how it would jump. Smash Ultimate is a Switch game. You have fighters spawning in all kinds of stuff. You could easily just have Excitebiker spawn in a ramp. Ayumi Tachibana's whole gimmick as a fighter would probably just be, how on earth do you make a regular everyday woman from a visual novel into a fighting game character? I'm sure they could figure something out. Rhythm Girl could probably just be a compilation of a bunch of things from those games, like Karate Joe, the Chorus Kids, the Monkey, the Reporter Girl and the Buff Dude. You could get really wacky and creative, it all having quite a unique mechanic of making everything rhythm-based. Monita seems like she wouldn't have much to pull from solely relating to her, but if you pull from the whole of Nintendo Land, you could make something really interesting. And finally, I specifically wanted the Power Glove to be another fighter in a similar vein to Rob, where it's a real-world piece of hardware that Nintendo sold that is reimagined into being a Smash character. It would be very weird with just having this sentient glove crawl around. What would it even do? I don't bloody know. Give it telekinesis or some shit. Make its final smash summoning in a giant virtual boy that blasts everyone with the color red. Okay, now to move on to the actual series to give new fighters in, and we'll go in reverse order so we're not stuck in Mario and Pokemon hell for the first full half of the video. Okay, Kingdom Hearts. 1 character already in Smash, so doubling it will just give us 1 more. Some might say Riku, some might say Roxas as an Echo, but I'm going Aqua for this choice. I'm not a Kingdom Hearts fan or anything, but my friend is a mega fan of the series, and in school would hold me hostage to absorb everything there was to know about the series, including just so much confusing lore shit that is even more incomprehensible for someone like me who didn't even play the games. And from what I remember, Aqua was a pretty big deal, arguably the 2nd most popular character behind Sora. And she also just looks different from Sora, which is something I can't say for Roxas, so yeah, Aqua it is. Don't know what would differentiate her moveset from Sora since she also has a Keyblade from what I remember, but hey, I'm not a Kingdom Hearts fan, so I'm just going to assume she'd be different enough. Also, she has a great character design and some pretty cool costume choices from what I've found from Aqua for Smash searches. For Tekken, okay, to be honest, I just looked up other Tekken characters for Smash, and the consensus I got was that Heihachi would probably be the most likely, but the one people actually would like to see is Yoshimitsu. And yeah, he seems pretty cool, so we'll go with that. Does Minecraft even have actual characters? The guy you play as is the only actual character I can think of, and the only one with in-depth moveset potential. So the second Minecraft fight-up would have to be a regular monster or something. Creepers are pretty iconic, so we'll go with that. They feel more like assist trophy material, but so does every other choice, so it'll have to do. Okay, now for arms. And this one has a lot of good choices. I don't think it's too out of the realm of possibility for Min Min to return in the next game, or to even get a new ARMS character. Even if it didn't sell as good as Splatoon did, I think Nintendo would still want to keep around the presence of ARMS as a showcase of their diversity of IP and whatnot. Anyway, I'm going to pick Twintel. Sure, she doesn't even use her arms, but in this hypothetical, Min Min is still also in the roster anyway, so the non-arm aspect shouldn't be too big of a deal. Fatal Fury. Like these other late Ultimate DLC series, just one more character will be added since they only have one fighter to begin with. For this one, I had to consult this crazy thing called cultural osmosis, also known as picking the only other Fatal Fury characters I remember existing. And those were Mai Shiranui and Geese Howard. It is not going to be Mai. So let's just go with Geese Howard and leave it at that. Banjo-Kazooie. In a lot of these what if each series in Smash had one more fighter videos, every one of them put Gruntilda as the Banjo-Kazooie pick, and I can't exactly see it. I get villain reps can be appealing, but in this case I just can't really see it, and it surprises me whenever I see Grunty mentioned, because Banjo-Kazooie already has another playable character. Mumbo, the witch doctor guy who gives you transformations in the first game and who you can actually play as in the second game to perform rain dance spells and levitation and a whole bunch of other crazy shit. I think he'd be a way better fit for another Banjo rep in Smash than Gruntilda, and I think his moveset would be more fun too. Dragon Quest is a bit of a weird case because for some reason, whenever the series is mentioned in Smash Bros, in the game and outside of it in promotional videos and such, it's just Dragon Quest XI, which leads me to believe that it's just Dragon Quest XI specifically that was allowed to be in Smash Bros by some contract or whatever. So I'm going to also follow that restriction and just pick only a character from 11. Thankfully, that restriction isn't that problematic for this series, because I think the second most likely Dragon Quest character is the Slime, which is in every game, and was even being briefly considered by Sakurai. There's so many different types of slimes in these games that there's a lot to pull from, and it's simply iconic, so yeah, pretty easy choice. Persona seems to have a similar restriction as Dragon Quest, because the logo they have for it specifically is the Phantom Thieves logo, and all the trailers specifically mention its crossover between Smash and Persona 5. Not just Persona or Shin Megami Tensei in general. Therefore, I'm going to choose another Persona 5 character for this one, which is extra tricky in this case because per the time frame restrictions I'm also following, Persona 5 Royal stuff is off the table, so unfortunately adding Violet doesn't line up, because I think she'd make a great Joker Echo Fighter. And I seriously doubt they'd do a Ketchi because Persona 5 was too new at the time, so they'd stay clear from spoilers, especially since Atlus back then banned people from streaming Persona 5's ending. And none of the other Phantom Thieves feel right, so Morgana, I guess? I mean, hey, he's already on the mural. Finally moving on to a series that already has more than one fighter, Castlevania. A really long-running series with a lot of games to pull characters from, but one character is an absolute no-brainer, and that's Alucard. He already has a good enough chance at being in Smash as is. In this hypothetical of 150 characters in the roster, he's all but guaranteed. The fourth character is where things get interesting though, because it could honestly go anyway. Trevor Belmont could be cool, but would perhaps be too similar to Simon. They play literally identical in the games after all. And I was also initially thinking of choosing Shanoa from Order of Ecclesia, because of how unique her glyph-based playstyle would be, but I ultimately decided on Soma Cruz, the protagonist of the Sorrow duology, so to speak. Right now, I'm more of a classic Castlevania guy, so I don't really know those games, or what sets him apart from other Castlevania characters, but he's quite popular, so it felt like the right choice. Splatoon feels like a no-brainer too, just add the Octolinks as an Echo Fighter. But then I stopped and thought about it for a moment, and realised that it might be better to have an original character instead of an Echo, in the form of Agent 8, the protagonist of Splatoon 2's Octo Expansion DLC. That way, you could still have an Octoling as a fighter, while also having it be an actual new character. Just have them use the weapons unique to Splatoon 2, and that's a solid new fighter idea if you ask me. Finally moving past the Ultimate franchises, and onto Smash 4, starting with Bayonetta. This one's so simple that I'm kinda shocked they didn't actually do it in Smash Ultimate, and that's Jeanne as an Echo Fighter of Bayonetta. Really don't get why this didn't end up happening. It's such a no-brainer, but maybe Platinum didn't feel like it. Final Fantasy VII. Yes, just 7, because this is another quote-unquote franchise that seems to just be delegated to a single game with its presence in Smash, which is real unfortunate because Final Fantasy is such a gargantuan franchise that you could honestly have 10 fighters and it'd only just be scratching the surface. So to have them all just be from 7 is a bit lame, but whatever, rules are rules. We have Cloud and we have Sephiroth. I could see the argument for Zack being added as a Cloud Echo, but I prefer the idea of Tifa and Barrett more. Aerith might be more important and iconic though, so I could also see her, but I didn't choose her simply because I imagine they would want to prioritize fighters that are actual, well, fighters, and Aerith is very much not that. She's strong, but adding her to Smash might feel weird. And also, I don't know if you could get around the fact that her main thing is healing. Moveset might be too weird if you did that, so yeah, Tifa and Barrett it is. And hey, that works for me, because the Switch 2 version of 7 Remake is the only game in the franchise that I've even played, so I actually somewhat kinda sort of know what I'm talking about than if I started suggesting Terra or Kefka or whatever. Chun-Li. Chun-Li is borderline a shoo-in for the next Smash game. She's that iconic. And for the 4th Street Fighter character, I feel it should also be one of those uber popular icon characters, and so as someone who's not a fan of Street Fighter, my mind goes to Akuma. So yeah, Chun-Li and Akuma it is. Xenoblade. Look, as much as I love this franchise, even I think that 6 fighters from just Xenoblade 1, X, and 2 is a bit much. So Pyra and Mythra will count as one slot and it'll just be 4 characters. X needs some love, so Elma is the choice from that game. I don't think anyone wants to see their generic player character from X run around, but the 4th character is a tough choice that really depends on the logic of this. Do I pick another 2 character? Pyra and Mythra were DLC compensations from Rex being too late to get into the base game, so the idea of 2 Xenoblade 2 characters being DLC is a bit silly, so I'm actually going with Fiora for this one. This might seem like a weird choice since characters like Ricky is already an assist trophy, or you could have Dunban as an echo of Shulk because both wielded the banana in their lives, but Fiora has actually already been in a crossover game called Project Cross Zone 2, alongside Lucina and Crumb by the way, and even weirder, she was the only Xenoblade character in that game. Shulk wasn't there, and Fiora was also alongside Shulk in the Xenoblade 2 DLC, and that was Hom's Fiora, which is extra weird. It would naturally have to be another character from 1, and thus Fiora seems like the right call. She's important to both the plot, the lore, and is a consistent presence when Xenoblade 1 is depicted to other games like crossovers, so she seems like the right choice. So that leaves the Xenoblade lineup as Shulk, Fiora, Elma, and Pyra/Mythra. Miss Pac-Man, or something. Wait, why on earth isn't she called Pac-Woman? Why both the Miss and the Man? That's so dumb. Anyway, actually, what even is the difference between a Miss Pac-Man arcade machine and a regular one? Huh. It's faster and it has a random element to it. Well, I guess that could be how she plays in Smash. She can be an echo of Pac-Man, but be faster, but her attacks are also a bit more unpredictable. There, that'll do it. Punch Out. Mike Tyson would be real funny. And Doc Lewis is more recognizable than the actual opponents in Punch Out, but I think Glass Joe would be a fun choice. Just make him exactly like Little Mac, but just be really shit. Like, they actively go out of their way to make him just the worst character in the game. It'd be fun to just have an outright joke character on the roster. Zero is the choice for Mega Man. I like regular old Mega Man X as much as the next guy, but Zero's rule of cool already brought him far enough to get into fighting games before X did, so I think the same would happen for Smash. Well, I'll tell you what, Animal Crossing most certainly does not need 4 characters being put into a game where they beat each other up, but that's just how the cookie crumbles with this video. Tom Nook is an easy choice, and I guess KK Slider is the 4th pick. I guess choices are going to be a bit harder from now on. Nice and quick, the second Pikmin character will be Louie, and he'll be an echo of Olimar and use different Pikmin. Done. Sonic the Hedgehog is pretty easy to figure out. It's only 1 character, so doubling it makes the count just 2. And Echo Fighters were a big thing in Ultimate, so just add Shadow as an echo of Sonic. Nice and simple. Metal Gear. A lot of choices for this one. Well, maybe, but I'm a pleb and haven't played a Metal Gear game, so I'm gonna pick Raiden, because he has a striking design, would be a bit different from Snake, and most importantly, he's in the memes. No, I'm not counting Waluigi as a Wario character. If there was to be another WarioWare character, it would have to be either Mona or Ashley. Ashley is probably the most popular choice, and I remember her scoring kind of high on a lot of those most wanted Smash newcomers lists back in the day, so I'll pick her. We'll probably have to pull a lot from that part where you play as her in Game & Wario, but maybe there's a lot of potential I'm just not thinking of. Either way, people want her, so she's a good fit. Kid Icarus coming in with a shocking 6 characters. Strange to think that such a small series already has 3 characters in Smash already, and perhaps even crazier that coming with 3 more choices doesn't actually feel all that forced. Medusa can come in as an echo of Palutena, and Hades can be some kind of semi-clone of the both of them, while still being distinctly original, and Viridi can just be completely unique. It's been a bit since Kid Icarus Uprising, so I'm hesitant to say that any of these guys will actually realistically be added to the actual next Smash game, but there's still definite potential. Fire Emblem is a huge series, maybe not so much in popularity, but in terms of entries, definitely. And it also already has a huge presence in Smash with 8 characters. Doubling that, and we get to 16. I have not played anywhere close to all the games in the series, but I'll do my best in picking characters that I think fit well, while also slightly diversifying the selection of Fire Emblem characters we have in Smash already, because right now it's mostly just main lords and basic sword wielding ones at that, and even worse, 4 of them share basically the exact same moveset. So here's what I picked: Lyn, Hector, Black Knight, Camilla, Celica, Edelgard, Dimitri, and Ana. All these characters are decently popular among Fire Emblem fans, and would basically all be quite a bit different from the Marth template, including Spear and Axe users, Camilla as a mounted character, Celica as another dual spellcaster plus sword on the side like Robin character, Edelgard and Dimitri as popular characters that would have had some hype around the time of the second wave of DLC, and a fun, jokey sort of character in the form of Anna. Her final smash can be all her sisters chucking staves in Volney areas like they're projectiles or some shit. Wow, 16 Fire Emblem characters in Smash. The mere concept of that probably makes Sonic fans shiver. Now, moving on to the OG Smash series, F-Zero. Okay, so a lot of people when making videos like these say Blood Falcon as an echo, but So instead I'm picking Samurai Goro, because he's at least an assist trophy. Though honestly, does anyone actually expect Samurai Goro to even remotely have a chance of being a full character? Okay, Earthbound / Mother / whatever you want to call it. We have Ness from the second game, Lucas from the third game. It only makes sense to have Ninten from the first game. Though he would most likely just be an echo since Ness is basically just a carbon copy of him in the series. Fourth character could very easily just be another party member, like Paula, Jeff or Pooh, or maybe have Lucas also have an echo, whether that be Kumatora or the Masked Man. And I also really strongly considered someone like Geek, or however you say it, before I realized, who am I kidding, Porky Minch just makes the most sense. And no, I don't really think size is a problem here. Yes, his hospital bed spider mech thing is huge, but if you actually knew anything about him besides Smash Bros. Brawl, you would learn that he had a much smaller mech in Mother 2 that is much more reasonable for Smash, so his moveset would just use that one. And also, he's one of the rare Mother characters that is in more than one game in the series, so that's got to count for something. Pokémon. Another 8 Pokémon. I'm just going to keep this quick because trying to decide, we could be here all day. I'm just going to pick one Pokémon from each generation that existed by the time of Ultimate's DLC wrapped up, so 8. And I'm sure as hell not making Pokemon Trainer into 3 separate fighters, because no way in hell am I coming up with 10 more Pokemon. Okay, so Eevee, Totodile, Absol, Garchomp, Zoroark, Zygarde, Serena, and Rillaboom are my choices. Some of these I have no idea how they'd play, and others I think could be pretty unique, like Eevee bringing in some of the other evolutions into special attacks, or Zygarde slowly building itself up with its own cells until it's in its 100% form. Star Fox. 3 characters already, 3 more characters to be added. Peppy and Slippy as more clones, and Crystal as a complete original. Kirby. Bandana Waddle Dee, Gooey as an almost one-to-one echo of Kirby just without the ability to copy, and Magolor because they seem to have a thing for this guy. Yoshi is one of the franchises that actually benefits from the no characters after Smash Ultimate rule I made. Because if you ask me what dog character would be added into Smash nowadays, I would say Pikmin 4's Ochi. But before Ochi existed, I think Poochie from the Yoshi games would have been a reasonable choice. Metroid. Oh god, Metroid. So this franchise is kind of screwed with the whole no characters after Smash Ultimate thing, because that means no characters from Dread or Prime 4. And I'm supposed to come up with 4 more Metroid characters. It's usually just Samus versus a whole load of aliens, so the Omega Metroid as a way of bringing in the titular enemy of the series into Smash as a fighter, while also advertising the what would have been recent release of Samus Returns. The SAX from Fusion as a weird semi-clone of Samus that can use its DNA as the X-Parasite to morph into various monster forms. So maybe this is cheating, but I guess you could also bring in Sylex, but just the version of Sylex before Prime 4 came out. You wouldn't be able to use any of the interesting things from Prime 4, but it'll have to do. And the final character? Rundus, I guess? I heard people wanted him back in the Smash 4 days, I think, so it'll have to do. I'm telling you, it took me so long to think of those characters. I'm a fan of the series, but I just couldn't think of them. Okay, last 3 series to tackle. Zelda. We have Link, Sheik, Zelda, Young Link, Ganondorf, and Toon Link. So 6 more characters. And I'm going to try and not get another Link. But who's to say why not another Ganon? I'm choosing Pig Ganon as the first of the 6 new characters. Make him based solely off his presence in the classic 2D Zelda games with his trident. And since they were asked for quite a bit, let's add Impa and Skull Kid too. We already have 3 Links, so why not 3 Zeldas? Let's add Tetra as the quote-unquote Toon Zelda of the roster. Midna is a popular character, so add her in her imp form as a character and give her some Twilight Beast as a replacement mount, since she probably won't have Wolf Link. And finally, as a theoretical DLC pick, I choose Urbosa. None of the other champions really feel right as a Smash character for one reason or another, but Urbosa would fit quite nicely as a fighting game character, I reckon. Real quick, Dixie Kong, Cranky Kong, Funky Kong. I don't know who's asking for Funky Kong in Smash, but I wouldn't complain about it. Okay, now on to the final series, Super Mario. 9 characters in Smash already, and we're adding 9 more for a grand total of 18. Yeah, this was a little difficult to think of good characters. Waluigi isn't a Wario character, But as a Mario character, he should be good. Rounding out the Mario Bros. 2 quadrio of sorts, it's Toad. Representing the RPGs is Paper Mario, Geno, and Fawful, from the Paper Mario, Mario RPG, and Mario & Luigi series respectively. Probably bottom of the barrel, but I could see Goomba being another random mob enemy character alongside Piranha Plant. More specifically, represents Luigi's Mansion. King Boo could be an interesting character, I think. Okay. I'm really running out of ideas here. 9 more characters to address one franchise without including super new relevant characters from recent years is kind of difficult. Dry Bowser as an echo of Bowser, I guess? And finally, look, I don't really like this idea very much, even more so in the context of 2018 when Ultimate came out, but Pauline, I guess. Give her some hat-throwing stuff from Odyssey, similar to how Rosalina did the spin stuff from Galaxy. There, all 9 done. That was a lot of characters, and I feel my sanity is crumbling for genuinely having to resort to Funky Kong, Samurai Goro, KK Slide, and Dry Bowser of all things as theoretical new Smash Bros characters. But it was a fun experiment. At least, I think it was fun. And remember, if you thought this video was extremely stupid, I kinda agree, to be honest. If you're expecting more videos like this in the future, then don't. Don't expect anything from me ever again.
Oh, shut up, Louis!